Too many times in Africa, we see that foreigners who commit crimes get away with it. But recently, we are seeing that African countries are actually standing up for themselves and they are fighting back. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Janita Maya. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Now let's dive in. Now, recently 22 Chinese nationals were arrested in Zambia for cyber crimes. Watch this video.
A Zambian court on Friday jailed 22 Chinese nationals over cyber crimes which included internet fraud and online scams targeting people from Zambia and elsewhere. The magistrates' court in the capital Lusaka jailed them for periods ranging from 7 to 11 years. They were part of a group of 77 people, the majority of them Zambians, arrested in April.
This is just the beginning. In the past, we have seen criminals walking away freely after committing such or similar crimes. But this time, because we have the Cyber Security and Cyber Crime Act or Bill, Cyber Crime Act in the country. So this is where now I can confidently say that the law or the act now is operational, and it's a warning even to other would-be offenders.
Scamming gangs are increasingly running their operations in African countries after Beijing launched a crackdown on their activities in Southeast Asia. Zambia's Drug Enforcement Commission says it has noted a spike in the number of cyber-related fraud cases.
Can we give an applause for Zambia? They had their cyber act together and they stood up for themselves and fought against foreigners. Now, one thing that stood out to me, he said Beijing was cracking down on such gangs. But you know where they decided to relocate to and do the gang criminal activities? They decided to relocate to African countries, knowing that they could just bypass the law or they could get away with it. Because when you see among the number were Zambians, and by them thinking of coming to an African country, that should tell you a lot, because that should tell you that they thought they could get away with it. But shout out to Zambia for stepping in and putting a stop to these cyber crimes, because in the end, everyone is affected. No matter who you are, a scammer is a scammer. If it's your day, your money is gone. If it's your day, your assets are gone. Anyone can get it. I mentioned earlier that there's a reason why they relocated their gang activities to an African country, and I want us to first dissect why Zambia. What was so special about Zambia? Now watch this clip from Wodemaya.
Are foreigners in their own country. Going to Zambia for the first time, it was shocking to me to see Chinese signboards everywhere. Everything were in Chinese. How could you allow foreigners to come and establish businesses in your country and everything is in their own language? Something like this will never ever happen in China. This is why I'm saying that Zambians are foreigners in their own country.
Now that clip from Wodemaya was a few years ago. It was actually 4 years ago, and he talked about seeing Chinese symbols or signs everywhere when he got to Zambia, and that can be said about so many African countries, but let's concentrate on Zambia. Now, what do the signs show you? The signs show you that there's like a huge Chinese influence in that country, because when they put up a Chinese sign, which normal African is going to read Chinese? Now, there are people who read Chinese, like people who speak Chinese, obviously. Wodemaya is one of them. But just think about it. If I put up a signpost in my local language, I expect my tribemates to understand it, It's like clearly I'm only communicating to a particular group of people, and I want to isolate them from this other group of people. Now think about it. There's a Chinese signpost up there, right? It's communicating to the Chinese. They could have easily put it in English, although some have Chinese and English, but let's concentrate on one thing. It's communicating to the Chinese. A normal African, a local person who hasn't traveled out of that country, can they read Chinese? Are they able to understand this signpost that's put up there? No. And what does that tell you? They are communicating and talking to each other like they are in their own country. Now, if they feel comfortable enough to do that in an African country that gained its independence, that is independent from any colonial power, what does that tell you? It tells you that they have a lot of power in said country. And for Zambia to stand up to the Chinese and say, we understand we are getting foreign aid. We understand you are doing business in this country. We understand that you're doing A, B, C, D. But what we shall not stand for is crime in our country, says a lot. Guys, when I see news like this, I do not just see it like it's news. When someone decides to stand up to their oppressor or oppressor to be, that is the road to freedom. Once you stand up to someone who has a lot of control over you, those are the first steps that you're taking to break the chains that they've put you in. Those are chains. Recolonization is happening. Those are chains that have put most African countries in. But for Zambia to stand up to them and tell, you know what? Not in my country. You are not going to run a syndicate. You are not going to have as many SIM cards as you want for you to do what you want, for you to commit all the fraud you want in my country. It says a lot.
It's telling us that there's a big problem somewhere. Why should they be armed like this when they're carrying out agenda? Look at the rounds, the number of rounds.
So my question is this: how does a Chinese national acquire a firearm in an African country? I don't understand that. Have you ever seen an African with a firearm in China? Have you ever seen that? Africans are too nice. I'm just going to be honest with you, fellas, because I have never seen people so passive, so forgiving, so accepting as Africans. We just accept anything. Do you know what they would do to you if you went and did fraud in China? You're not going to come out of their life. You're never coming out of there. You know what they're going to do to you if you go to China, do funny things like drugs, or scheming people, lying to people, making money illegally out of people. You're finished. Your life is finished. But I find it crazy that Chinese can come to Africa and carry a firearm. And what? 78 round of ammunition. My man, 78 round of ammunition. When, where? How did he get that? How do you explain this? And they're probably just going to be arrested and yeah. Then
now shout out to Zach Makasa. That's where I got this clip from. On his YouTube channel, but he said something that actually stood out to me. He said Africans are so welcoming and very passive in the things that I do, and I say this all the time and I get a lot of backlash for it, but I see it firsthand. Just so accepting of everything with open arms. Your fraudsters, come to me, because what were the other Zambians doing with them? Your fraudsters, oh, you can feed me for a day, oh, come here, you can do this for my family, come here. It's like, sometimes think for yourself and your country. Sometimes have pride. Yes, I'm sorry. Sometimes have pride and say, you know what? I will not stand for that. That is not who I am, and that's not what I'm going to stand for. I stand. You stay somewhere. And the other thing that also stood out to me was, if you're committing fraud, why would you need a firearm with that many rounds? Like the official was showing us. Do you need a firearm to commit fraud? I think with fraud, you need a SIM card and a phone. So what are you doing with a firearm, my friend? What are you going to do? Like, how dangerous? Like, this should just show you guys how dangerous this business was that they were in, Drugs are not the only dangerous things out there in this world. We're seeing fraudsters also on the rise. And they're doing so much worse. They're hurting so many people. And these are foreigners that you let into your country, and they're doing this, because like Zach Makasa said, which foreign country is going to allow you as an African to hold an illegal firearm? Please mention them in the comment section. An illegal firearm. You as a black person, which white people country is going to allow you to do that? They can't. Even the thought of it is laughable. Like, you have audacity to think you can own a firearm, an illegal firearm in this country? But they have the audacity to think they can own it in an African country because they know they can pay off A, they can pay off B, they can pay off C and get something for themselves. And use it, by the way. Don't think people just have these things for decoration. They have it with an intention to use. No one is holding a firearm for decoration. They intend to use it. Time will come and the need for it will come up. And guess what? You think they're going to shoot at their fellow people? No. It is an African that they're going to shoot at. It is you who is watching. So let's not be so negative and, talk about the bad things only, because with what we're seeing, we are seeing that certain African countries actually standing up to these foreigners, that letting them know we can't let this just pass by, We can't let you do whatever it is that you feel like you want to do in our country. Now, let's look at Kenya, our dear neighbors. They did the same thing and they also stood up for themselves. A few Chinese were also arrested. Let's watch this clip.
And in Kenya, authorities in Kenya and of course in Zambia have under a week arrested Chinese nationals deemed as being threats to their respective national security. It started off over last weekend in Zambia, where police reported the arrest of 2 Chinese over allegations that they were giving illegal military training to members of a local security firm. Police said the 2 were picked up in Livingstone, the tourist capital. A number of Zambians were also arrested as part of the operation. Police also confiscated shotguns, a pistol and ammunition. Southern Province Police Commissioner Bonnie Capesso said in a statement that the director of Alert Safety Security in Livingstone was also detained. The group, which includes a woman, are to be held in detention as investigations into their operations continue. The arrest took place at the Livingstone area in the capital, Nairobi.
Like I said, I will sing this on top of my voice. I like how African countries are standing up for themselves. Now, granted, this was a few years ago, but they are doing something to eradicate crime. It's not just crime that their countrymen are doing, even crime the foreigners are doing. Crime is crime, and no one is above the law. I feel like that is the message most African countries should have, Crime is crime, no one is above the law. If you are found doing something criminal, then the law will get you, Like, that's the message that should be going around. That's the message that so many African countries should, be portraying. Like, no matter who you are, no matter if your people are offering aid to said country, we cannot bow our heads and look the other way when you do something that will harm our people or harm the image of our country. I like that. Let's look at Nigeria and what they're doing.
And finally, in Africa, a Chinese supermarket has been accused of racism against locals in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Nigerians were outraged after they were denied entry inside the store for not being of Chinese descent. The West African nation's consumer watchdog has now shut down the Chinese market and summoned its owner. Our next report goes into detail.
Not a day goes by when China and its behavior don't make the news. This time, Chinese actions have sparked outrage almost 10,000 kilometers away. Residents in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, are enraged with the way they've been treated. A Chinese supermarket in Nigeria is at the center of controversy. The shop is located in a building run by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in the Nigerian capital. The Chinese supermarket has been accused of racism by denying entry to African shoppers. After videos of the supermarket's blatant racism against local Nigerians went viral, the West African nation's consumer protection watchdog closed down the Chinese store. Officials of Nigeria's Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission locked down the Chinese supermarket until further notice. They also summoned the store's owner for investigation. So how did this instance of Chinese racism against Nigerians in their own country surface? It all started earlier this week. A group of Nigerians went to the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to shop from its supermarket. They were all stopped at the entrance by guards who said that people of only Chinese descent were allowed inside. And then the outcry began. Nigerian authorities have refused to reopen the Chinese supermarket. However, the racist attitude by Chinese towards Nigerians and Africans is nothing new. Reports highlight that Chinese social media is full of anti-African content. And despite calls for controlling racism on Chinese social media, Beijing has done almost nothing about it. Chinese racism came into spotlight even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Africans who were living in China became victims of Chinese racism repeatedly. Over the years, reports of Africans being treated unfairly by the Chinese have become far too frequent. It reached a point where governments had to intervene to douse the flames. And instead of facing the crisis, Beijing called the racism incidents a way to create animosity between China and Africa.
Guys, I feel like this clip just kind of explained everything. We can see that from their leaders themselves, they're not taking accountability for their people. Because if they decided to, you see how YouTube kind of censors certain words? If they decided to censor certain words, that were racist towards black people on their media or social media, then I feel like that would, in a way, it would be a tiny step, to stop the racism that's happening over there. But you can clearly see that they said that such allegations were just a way to stop the relationship between the two countries, and you don't see anyone standing up and taking accountability for anything. So yeah, I do support African countries that are standing up to Chinese who are committing crimes in these countries. Yes, stand up for yourselves, because if the tables were turned and you were an African committing any crime in their country, friend, you would not see the light of day. You would not. So, you know what? You have to do what you can to protect yourself as a country. Alright guys, that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I do not take it for granted. Yeah, also this video is sponsored by Maya Consultancy, okay, which is my other company. I help people relocate and move to Africa. I offer consultations, and I also offer an ebook. The ebook is at $15, consultation is $35. Like, you sit down with me, an hour, one-on-one, we discuss everything that you'd love to know about Africa or what you need to prepare for Africa, and then we get everything down to the T so that you have everything you need when you get here and you are not struggling when you are on the continent. Also, I'm wearing my merch, okay? Uganda looks good on me. This is a sample. It will be public, I hope, in the near future, like a month or two. So yeah, let's be on the lookout for that. I do not take it for granted. Thank you so much. My name is Janet. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.